Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars and Locked On Sun Devils your first listen of the day. Richie Bradshaw from Locked On Sun Devils there. I'm Jake Hatch from Locked On Cougars. All right, so Richie, Saturday night, after a controversial finish in the Arizona game, Arizona student section and other fans in the stands started chanting F the Mormons. Now, this has been a bit of an issue over the past few seasons. We had Oregon's football at the Oregon football game in 2021. It was chanted by the Oregon student section. USC's football team, their fans, chanted at BYU in 2022, if I recall correctly. We had Providence earlier this season do it to BYU. So it's been kind of an ongoing issue here for BYU, and it's prompted outcry from multiple sides, not just BYU side of things. Our good friend Drake Toll did a really good piece, I thought, on Locked On Big 12 talking about it. But you and I were talking off air just the other day, and you mentioned the fact that even though ASU maybe had some plans to do this, cooler heads and smarter people prevailed. Can you lend some insight and let Cougar fans know why ASU fans actually might be their friend?
Well, obviously there is a rivalry that is developing between ASU and BYU. You hop on Twitter, you're going to see these fan bases constantly battling, and there's swear words that are thrown around, right? And there's certain people that don't care about those things. It's just right, wrong, or indifferent. Some people don't have an issue saying some things. But when you get that group mentality, that I won't call it a mob mentality because I think that's taking it to an extreme, but when you've got so many people that are collectively thinking the same thing and shouting it, and with anger too, like, that's not okay. And it's not okay for anything really. Like, it's not just Latter-day Saints. It can't be for any other religion or any other race or anything like that. That's not an okay thing to do. Like, it's sports. At some point in time, we need to lay down a line. This was something everyone was really, really worried about when BYU came to visit Arizona State. This was something that we had heard whispers about, was that the ASU student section was going to chant exactly that, F the Mormons.
Okay.
And people started getting wind of it. And ASU accounts, ASU fans, and even what we call the 942 crew, who represents the student section, got ahead of Barstool. Their Barstool Tempe page got ahead of it, and they said, we're not doing this. This is absolutely not okay. Like, not only is it not okay for doing that to BYU, but also realize how many of the Latter-day Saints are in the Valley that you could very easily upset. And then for what it's worth, like, Sam Levitt, your starting quarterback, is of the Jesus Christ Church of Latter-day Saints. It's like, that's not what we should be representing. So, yeah, I'm sure there were more than a few ASU fans that were still chanting that, but we were able to really get into everyone's heads of like, hey, you got to think bigger picture. This is not cool. This is not what we're about. Yeah. We can't do this.
Well, and that's the thing. I think any Cougar fan watching this is going to be actually applauding ASU for, as you mentioned, getting ahead of it and saying, no, we're nipping this right now in the bud. This is not going to happen on our watch. And that I think BYU fans can appreciate. And as you mentioned, there is a hearty population of LDS folks down there in the Valley. My sister-in-law grew up in Gilbert, of all places, so I know that there's going to be a lot of BYU fans in attendance at this game. You mentioned the fact it's not mob mentality. I call it the herd mentality, like where you're kind of
perfect.
You're in the middle of the group, and you're like, hey, I'm just going along with the flow. I get all that, but you're right. There are protected classes and just groups of people you just don't do that against. But I think that BYU fans hearing that, knowing that ASU and multiple sides said we're not going to do that. And as you mentioned, Sam Levitt, he is a member of the church. And the funny thing about the Arizona deal is they have Addison Arnold, who's on the roster, who's a member of the faith. One of their senior associate ADs is also a member. So
their quarterback is, what is it, the nephew of Coach Sataki?
Yeah. So
Noah Fafita?
Noah Fafita, yeah. So there's connections all over the place on this. So you look at it, and it didn't need to happen. I hope it doesn't happen going forward anymore. I hope that the national outcry will just end it at some point. But I guess speaking for BYU fans, hey, thank you, ASU, for being as upstanding as y'all are. And I think you may have earned a Cougar fan's respect by saying that.
And I hope that is the case, because for the collective amount of ASU fan bases and accounts, aggregate accounts and media members, and even just a college student who has 50 followers, for them to come out and put on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whatever, like, hey, do not do this. We're not about this. This is not okay. I'm really glad they were able to get ahead of it. And like to the point that a Barstool account is doing it, because right, wrong, or indifferent, Barstool has an image that they put out there. And it's not an image that is popular, I suppose. But for them to come out and they're like, yeah, we're not doing this, that hopefully paints a picture of the way that ASU was looking at this situation and understanding there are some bad eggs in here. And there's bad eggs in every fan base. There's bad eggs in U of A, in BYU, in Utah. But you need the core of your fan base to be able to step up and decide when something is wrong. And again, it's a sport. Yeah. Like, we love sports. Me and you, Jake, we live and breathe sports. This is our job to sit here and talk about BYU sports and Arizona State sports. But at the end of the day, you have to draw a line, and a hard line in the sand. And it should be when you get to responses, shouts, chanting, that get to that point of what U of A was doing. I appreciate, I don't remember if it was the athletic director or somebody higher up with U of A staff for their athletic department came out and issued an apology. I have not seen anything from anybody else. That's
I will say, so the Zona Zoo, I think is what it is. It's their student section. They did put out a statement, and their statement, by the way, was even better than Desiree Reed Francois, who's the AD statement, because they actually dug into the crux of the matter and said, hey, we don't do this. This is something we can't ever do again. Because funny thing about this is Richie, in 2006, the same thing happened with Arizona fans. So it's a two-time deal with Arizona. Now that's 20 years almost separated between the two incidences. But hey, you're right. It is sports, and I like to call it sports hate. There's a different thing between sports hate and actual hate, and there's a pretty hard line that was crossed there. But nonetheless, big ups to ASU fans. I'm speaking on behalf of BYU and Cougar Nation out here. Really do appreciate that. That's actually really a stand-up thing, because very easily could have been like, yeah, you know what, just do your thing. And that I think BYU fans, and as members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, for the vast majority of BYU fans, I think they can appreciate the fact that ASU did what they did.
Yeah, and I mean, ASU fans are rowdy. There's a ton of bars that are right next to the stadium on the infamous Mill Avenue. These kids are coming in inebriated, having a good time. It's not going to be easy to control them. And for them to be able to do that, well, and like, did you win the game? Sure. But BYU nearly won that game. And to the point where ASU students are on the field, literally on the field, because they stormed it. And I'm very happy that they didn't get the chance while they were on the field. I can't even imagine if you had F the Mormons chants and these kids are 20 feet behind you. That would have been awful. So I am very proud of our fan base, our student section, and all that stuff for being able to step up and not do that. But there's a line. Because you wouldn't chant this in public. So why are you doing it in a stadium?
Yep, no doubt about that. All right, Richie. Well, where can everybody find your fine work if they're a Cougar fan who wants to learn more about the Sun Devils?
Well, if for some reason you want to learn about my interesting football team, you can follow me at Richie Brads 36. The podcast is available on all platforms, whether that's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, all that good stuff. Jake, where can my ASU fans find you if they would like to have a debate with you?
Jacob C. Hatch on X, aka Twitter. Reach out anytime. I love to interact with anybody. I'm dead serious about that. The bigger thing is, if you want to check out all things BYU, check out Locked On Cougars. Like Richie said, YouTube, Apple Music, Spotify,
all of
wherever you get your podcast, we are there. The Locked On Network has got us covered. But as Richie, as always good to catch up with you, my man.
It's always a pleasure just shooting stuff with you, Jake, whether that's on our Big 12 crossover episodes or the Big 12 squad or anything like that.
I'll leave you
best in the biz.
I still owe you an explanation for the Provo push, but we'll hold that one for another day.
Yes. Nope. That we got to talk about that sometime. I want to know.
We will do that. But once again, thank you for making Locked On Cougars and Locked On Sun Devils your first listen of the day. And as always, once again, thank you for being everydayers with us right here on the Locked On Podcast Network.